Welcome to the 10th episode of Zest Talks. Shruti this side, and I'm thrilled to be your host on this journey as we delve into the captivating conversations that is going to happen here today. Let's keep it very simple. For those of you who don't know what Zest Talks is, Zest Talks, a distinctive initiative by Zoin Group, serves as a nexus where professionals converge to cultivate connections and share knowledge within a vibrant community. As an integral component of Zoin Group, Zest Talks shines as a symbol of innovative approaches to talent acquisition. Our platform has witnessed engagement and has welcomed 45,000 plus registrations across previous episodes and showcased enlightening dialogues through 9 impactful episodes featuring over 40 plus esteemed speakers from renowned companies like Ola, Deloitte, Urban Company, Jupiter, Zoomcar, etc. Zest Talks acts as a bridge between exceptional talent and the fastest growing companies. So join us in this dynamic community of knowledge, exchange, and networking, because this is what Zest Talks is all about, fostering connections to ignite success. Now, as I can see from the audience list that we have got a fantastic mix of individuals joining us today. And we totally cannot afford to keep you waiting any longer. So let us kickstart this event. Okay, now let's very quickly go through some guidelines for the webinar as we do for each episode. I'll be presenting my screen. I hope you can see it. Okay. So according to the guidelines, the event belongs solely to Zest partners. To ensure the quality, both chat and mic have been disabled. The chat will be open following the end of the discussion for the question and answer round. And lastly, for technical support, get in touch with Rishabh, one of our core team members. May I request everyone to take a screenshot of his number displayed over your screen in case you need it. And now let's finally introduce our speakers. So these remarkable individuals are like the pieces of a puzzle. Why? I'll tell you, because each of them brings their unique perspective to create a bigger picture of knowledge and wisdom. So without any further ado, let's introduce them one by one. It is an honor to introduce our first distinguished speaker, Mr. Sunil Kumar, with an impressive track record spanning over 2 decades. Sunil has held pivotal senior management roles at esteemed establishments. Currently serving as the Chief Technology Officer at ShipRocket, India's leading e-commerce empowerment platform, he is at the forefront of pioneering technological advancements. A graduate of IIT Kanpur with a BTech in Computer Science Engineering, Mr. Kumar's visionary leadership advocates for the seamless integration of technology solutions to drive consumer-centric product innovation. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Sunil Kumar to our Zest Talk stage. And now it is, yes, sorry, Sunil.
Thanks, Shruti.
Yeah, you're welcome, Sunil. And now it is my privilege to introduce to you Mr. Vijay Rayapati. With a remarkable career spanning leadership role at notable companies, including Nutanix, where he led the networking and security business unit, Mr. Rayapati's journey is nothing short of inspiring. Co-founder and CEO of Atomic Work, his passion for enabling employee empowerment and streamlining the operational complexities is evident in his mission. From co-founding Minjar, which developed the renowned cloud management platform BotMetric, to steering the Nutanix innovation ventures, his dedication to people success, startups, and product management shines through. Don't miss out on exploring his story of resilience and evolution, which is now featured on #TheGritStory. Check it out and be inspired by the tenacity that drives this remarkable individual. Welcome, Mr. Vijay. Okay, moving forward, it's with immense admiration that I introduce you all to Mr. KK George, a seasoned professional with over 30 years of illustrious experience in software product development. Mr. George's expertise has traversed a diverse landscape, leaving a trail of exceptional accomplishments. A true visionary, he developed the groundbreaking backup solution Cloud Clones and Cloud Snaps at StoreSimple, which has revolutionized the data protection and recovery processes. Additionally, Mr. George's contribution extends to award-winning products such as Manda Recovery Manager for MySQL. His remarkable journey from hands-on engineering to team management underscores his dedication to innovation and leadership. It is an absolute honor to have Mr. KK George as a distinguished panelist at Zest Talks here with us today. Welcome, George. Okay, moving forward, lastly, allow me to introduce our esteemed moderator for today's event, Mr. Balakrishna Birla, a hands-on technology leader with a remarkable ability to build robust team across diverse domains. Mr. Birla's expertise is expansive. With a deep understanding of e-commerce, content management systems, internet security, SaaS, cloud technologies, and much more, his experience encompasses a very broad spectrum of tech reels. His proficiency in optimizing the cloud infrastructure, his mentorship acumen, and his knack for conceptualizing the innovative products sets him apart. And well-networked and with startups and experience in building high-tech teams from scratch, Mr. Birla brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. It is an absolute honor to have him guide today's discussion at Zest Talks. Welcome, Mr. Balakrishna. So that was the introduction of the speakers for today's event. Now, before we pass the baton to our esteemed moderator, it's important to note that all of your insightful questions will be addressed by our panelists during the post-discussion session. And now, without any more delay, I invite Mr. Balakrishna to take the stage and guide us through this journey of insights and discovery. Mr. Birla, over to you. Birla, you're on mute, actually.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Thanks a lot for those wonderful introductions. I'm sure all the panelists will be feeling super excited now. So let's get started. So let me start with you, George. As I understand from your background, you have been a veteran of this space. You have been building in my opinion, you have been building the building blocks for others to build on top of them. So that's what I gathered from your LinkedIn profile. So just wanted to understand, where do you see what are the building blocks which will get built up in the generative AI space, and what type of, infrastructure companies which are building these building blocks are likely to emerge as we go along, George? George, you are not audible. I think you are also on mute.
Yeah, I'm on mute. Sorry.
Now I feel better. I was not the only one who did that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love being in the infrastructure space. So whatever I talk about is more about how the infrastructure space is influenced by generative AI, right? So there are a lot of areas that if you look at, generative AI can be helpful, right? A simple example is somebody creates a database query, right? A huge database query which could have joins and other kinds of stuff happening inside it, right? Now, when it hits the database server, a lot of times it might not be optimal, right? Because the person writing it may not be that conversant with exactly what's happening in the database at that point in time. So there could be, you could basically have a process that could rewrite the query to make it as optimal as possible for the given condition of the database at that point, right? So that's just a simple example of how generative AI could directly help any consumer of a database, right? So that's one example of a kind of infrastructure that you could build. Another kind, when you basically look at from an infrastructure perspective, right? In any SaaS company, you have a lot of infrastructure that you need to monitor. You need to understand what's going on. If there's a failure, you need to take care of it. So there could be companies that could come up, which could basically, today what happens is you have SRE folks, you have other folks who are monitoring the environment, the network, and the infrastructure to see if there's any failure, right? So if this is an idea, this is just an idea at this point, right? Where you basically take all the metrics, all the monitoring that's there, feed it into something like generative AI, keep it updated on the status of the entire SaaS infra that's there behind, and it could predict what's going to happen, right? Because it can see things like, okay, there is some latency going up there. There is a CPU that's getting hot on that machine or the other machine. You can do all kinds of things without having to do, today you have to set up a lot of alerts, 100,000 alerts you have to set, right? Before you have all the different kinds of things. Now, this could be just a simple way by which you could point to all of this metrics and everything into generative AI, and it could tell you when something is going to go wrong, predicting a failure. And always predicting a failure is always better than after failure taking an effect post a failure, right? So if you predict a failure, you can always go add a new machine there, remove this machine, without having any impact on services. So that's the kind of stuff that I would expect at the infrastructure level for generative AI to help with SaaS. Because I'm talking from a completely different perspective. Mostly when people talk about SaaS, you're talking about, okay, how would somebody use it for some purpose, right? I'm talking from the inverse phase because I'm more of an infrastructure guy. So.
That's what I saw in your LinkedIn profile. And Vijay, I was planning to come to you later, but I know you must be itching to contribute to this because you have built a product in this space, right? And worked with Nutanix. And before that, as if I remember right, you guys actually built a product to optimize the cloud infrastructure. So I'm guessing that some of these things will be close to your heart, Vijay, right?
Yeah. So generally people think, I start a company just around the trend, even though I didn't plan it that way. So when I did Minjar, the public cloud was like very nascent stages, just like today AI is. And, before that, even with Giza Page, we were on this whole social thing, when it was just taking off. I think timing is very important for founders and entrepreneurs, right? So around Gen AI, basically my view is threefold. First is, I think broadly, most of us agree that it's a order 10 magnitude earthquake, which is going to remake most of the landscapes, right? So when such a big shift happens, like a lot of landscapes will be remade. In that, some landscapes will be remade much faster than, few other landscapes. As George was basically saying, there is a tremendous opportunity to apply Gen AI even at an infrastructure layer, right? Whether it's for, doing a better monitoring, better optimization, better operations management. What we are looking at from our perspective is how can we do better internal operations and workflows management, right? Using this technology, because most of the times when this software shifts happen, like whatever, like on-prem software, the early folks kind of replicated whatever your on-prem software to come to on top of internet. And then with cloud, we basically said, hey, we can actually do a better service delivery as a SaaS. Now we are basically saying, okay, we need to do SaaS, all those past things, but we need to also like put intelligence at the core, right? Now, but fundamentally, if you look at, my belief is also that software is always about improving productivity at an individual level or a team level, or improving efficiency at a team, group, or a company level, right? So you take any software, it's always about productivity or efficiency, right? Now, most of us believe that this new software platform or paradigm, like GenAI, can essentially, help us deliver a 10x to 100x, productivity and efficiency. In some areas, much faster. In some areas, it could be, not immediately. I think as a founder, it's important for you to, see where I can apply, how I can, leverage. The third aspect I want to touch is like every technology, basically, provides some leverage, right? So I think internet basically enabled most of us to build, whatever we want to build, but it kind of, like reduce the cost of distribution, right? And now with the Gen AI, I think George said this, both the cost of creation and the cost of curation will come down dramatically. Okay. Not in terms of just content, as you gave a good example of monitoring metrics, or process management or operations automation, or, building autopilots or co-pilots or assistants, etc., will reduce the cost of both creation and curation, which is like a fantastic thing. If you're an engineer to build, it's also a really good thing to build if you are, a startup. And as a customer, you're always looking to improve both productivity and efficiency, right? As a company, you're trying to improve efficiency as a company, productivity of your individuals, teams, and whatnot. And that is essentially what we are also trying to do, through Atomic work for our customers. I couldn't be more excited about it. Obviously, there is like a lot of caution, just as individuals, we always overestimate what technology can do in a short run, and we completely underestimate what it will do in a long run, right? I think right now we are in a little bit of this super hype cycle of too much overestimation of thinking of AI as a magic wand. Probably we'll come back to it a little later in the discussion.
Okay, so coming to you, Sunil, looks like we missed each other at IIT Kanpur. I graduated in 95. You just got in 95.
But I got in 96.
Okay, cool. So I think all of us have a lot of SMSs which come from ShipRocket about things getting shipped to us. So I'm guessing that you guys obviously handle very huge volumes, right? And so how does it really fit into the logistics space? Are you guys really using it in some use cases or planning to use? Can you give us some oversight on that from a ShipRocket perspective?
Right, Balakrishna. So essentially, I concur with what Vijay mentioned. See, the biggest change with generative AI is making for the companies and people's lives is essentially twofold. One, making the distribution thing slightly easier and faster. And also, it reduces the cycle time in terms of iterations. It reduces it pretty steeply. So in our case, we have started using it in some of the business processes and use cases. So I'll share a couple of them with you. So we, as you mentioned, we send a lot of SMSs, and we also have a product with the name as ShipRocket Engage, which is essentially a CRM on WhatsApp, or WhatsApp in a box kind of a CRM. So a lot of messaging or state change of orders. For example, if an order is on cash on delivery and the seller wants to reach out to you, that, okay, Vijay, if you pay it by using this link, you will get a discount coupon and all that stuff, just to incentivize. So a lot of personalization need arises in such conversations. So we have started exploring and have taken baby steps in that front. We have an elaborate thing which is there. So it is helping us a lot in personalized communications with enabling personalized communications between our sellers and their end buyers. So that is one of the use cases which we have started using them. The other thing is we are also into warehousing business. So we have close to around 35, 36 warehouses across country where we actually store the products, and warehouse optimization activities go into picture. So what happens in such a business, forecasting or analysis of trends with respect to seasonality, with respect to businesses in which our clients are, with respect to in terms of how things go up and down or change in terms of festivities, be it Diwali shopping and all those things. So a lot of stuff the warehousing teams and the inventory teams spend too much time and effort in getting that right, so that our warehouse operations are running in a more efficient manner. So we are exploring some stuff on that on those lines. We are integrated with multiple sellers, so definitely they do share their product catalogs with us. So as generative AI has a very good use case in terms of content generation and augmentation. So catalog enrichment, especially if we talk about the ONDC thing which we are envisaging. So it's a totally distributed architecture and paradigm. So in that particular case, somebody has to take a lead and help that, okay, catalog enrichment is a pretty good use case. So we are trying to do something there. One thing where we have covered a decent amount of ground is essentially in terms of training our models. And so I'll give you a simple use case. Suppose you are a seller and you receive, say, 5 different orders, and all the 5 orders are on a cash on delivery order. And suppose an order of Sunil Kumar has a high propensity of return to origin. That, okay, Sunil has tendency that he orders and he receives only 1 in 5 orders. So that is a two-way freight thing for you, and you will be blocking your inventory. So in order to flag off or highlight such particular use cases, which we call as RTO prediction. So there we have covered some ground. So these are the few use cases which we are using. And it is just a beginning, and I'm sure in next 1 to 2 quarters, as times are changing, we'll also learn the tricks of the game pretty quickly and build more and more involved solutions for our customers.
So Sunil, I had a follow-up question on one of your use cases. You talked about enhancing product descriptions and things like that. Do you foresee a scenario where you will use AI to generate data and that will show up on a web page? Then Google search will run another piece of AI to detect that this content is actually generated via AI and probably deprioritize that. Do you foresee that kind of things happening, AI fighting AI from different companies?
So the first half has already started.
Okay.
Where the image, video, and even the description, metadata, all is enriched depending on the information available to these LLM models, and also the generative AI things which are built on top of it. The second one, I mean, as you are, I think you have correctly pointed out that as such and such instances do increase, in order to have that genuine ranking stuff. I mean, what we used to study about the TF-IDF thing in terms of search engine rankings. So that will also come into a play, and it is a very near possibility.
Okay. So Vijay, I had a follow-up question for you as well. In your use cases, are you seeing any hallucination problems? I mean, generative AI, one of the biggest problems, at least I have seen in some of the applications I have tried to do, it is very difficult to make it shut up, right? It always speaks something, it may be right or wrong. So are those kind of issues you are also seeing, Vijay, and are there some ways to work around those kind of problems?
Yeah. So, I mean, because, they are like trained on, such variety and volume and vastness of data, the the emergent behavior of ability to make up things is there. The bigger the model that you use, the emergent behavior is that was, right? That's what people call it as a hallucination. So what we do in our case is we apply guardrails, kind of a framework, Birla. So essentially, look, AI is great at, as I said, creation and curation. Now you also have to validate for factfulness. You have to validate for relevancy. You have to validate for bias. You have to validate for with maybe some existing data, right? So there are ways, even though these frameworks are fairly early, there are like bunch of frameworks. There is a framework from Microsoft called Guidance, which allows you to put some guardrails. There is a framework from NVIDIA called Nemo Guardrails, which also allows you to apply, some of this post response from LLM, right? How you want to format it, what fact checks you want to run it, how you want to structure the response and tonality of it. The most LLMs themselves also allow you to, tune the prompt parameters. Like, if you don't want it to be verbose, you specify, the top K parameter. If you don't want, you reduce the temperature of it, right? Essentially, you don't want it to go make up things, right? But having said that, just like there was a brittleness, in most new technologies, there is a lot of brittleness in AI. I think the last point I made earlier was it's not a magic wand. Even though it looks like a very smart black box, there is no magic wand. You still have to apply, all the things that we have done in a traditional software engineering, processing input before you send it. Once the output comes, you verify that output and then, send it back. Those things still have to be done, even with the Gen AI.
I think the science fiction movies make people believe that suddenly everything will change and it'll become like a movie, I guess. Right? So let me focus on you back, George. I think you have seen, I guess, maximum downturns of our industry, and you would have seen ups and downs being in the industry for over 3 decades. I'm guessing that amongst us, you will have the maximum experience on, seeing all the 2008 days as well as 99 days, all those things you would have seen. So one question I had for you is, what do you see the impact on job market? Do you see things changing, George? And how do you suggest that how people prepare for this? Means some of us are grown up enough to have our kids who are now planning to start their careers. Some of us are in stage where we have colleagues and friends who are building their careers. So my question for you, George, is what do you see the impact, and how do you think that people can be prepared for what is coming on?
Yeah, this was just how people are talking about Gen AI today. This is exactly what people were talking about when we were introducing soft computers into the country so long back, right? That will take jobs, it'll take off. But what we have seen is that whether you take any industry, right, it is the software has influenced that industry, and you're basically almost everybody is using it. No, there will be a lot of non-value add work which is basically grunt work, which gets automated out, which gets which becomes redundant anymore, right? But there are a lot more new jobs that get created because of this, right? Earlier there were no when computers were just coming in, people said that all kinds of jobs will go away, but that never happened. What happened was people upskilled, they understood how to use software. Simple example, people who are typists, right? They now became data entry operators. They became they upskilled and they added value to their own stuff, and they add value to their company, and so on and so forth, right? So I see the same thing happening even with generative AI, right? Yeah, there will be a bunch of things which can be automated, will go away because generative AI is going to help do a bunch of things. But as long as people can upskill and learn new stuff, I don't think there will be any shortage of jobs in the industry going forward too, in the same manner that it happened previously. That's the way I say, though, which is why I say when people talk about, okay, should I get into mechanical engineering, software engineering, or whatever? I say, follow your heart. What you like to do best, go with that. Understand how things work. Get your analytical ability to the best possible place. You will definitely find the right jobs for yourself, which will help you get satisfaction, not just the money part of it, right? Get satisfaction in what you're doing.
Yeah, George, actually, you reminded me of one old thing. Some of these railway reservation people, right? I don't know if you remember, Sunil, maybe this was before you. In IITK, those guys used to come for training on computers.
Yeah.
Initial set of people who were being trained for, handling railway reservations. And yeah, at that time, there was a big deal about reservations will get computerized and so many people will lose their jobs. And I'm guessing nobody cribs about that anymore, right? We are all happy that I can book and cancel at few clicks, right? So otherwise, railway, I'm sure, George, you would have stood in queues and booked tickets in your childhood, right? I have done that. I'm not sure about Vijay is probably much younger, at least looks much younger.
Yeah. So I remember when I was in my high school in early 90s. So there was a bank employees who went on a strike thinking computers are going to take their jobs away, right? But as George said, I think probably in entire human history, probably 2023 is when we are employing the most number of humans.
Right.
Okay. I think every time, so but in a short run, I think it causes a lot of fear, which is a fair point to say.
Right.
In a mid run, it will displace some jobs, it will create some jobs, but in a long run, it will just create like so many jobs, because look at number of bank branches we used to have before, software technology was applied versus post. It went up by 100x to probably even 1000x, right? So that's how the jobs gets created. I think that is probably overplayed, currently. But look, these problems we always had, when cars came, all these horse carriage people were like, what happens to us? What happens to horses? What happens to people who feed them? What happens to people who drive, ride them? What happens to blacksmiths? As George said, I think skilling is the only thing. The skill that all of us need to learn is to learn new things so that we are upskilled, so we can capitalize on the opportunity.
So, yeah, essentially, if we look, I tend to agree to an extent to both of you. But if we look at, say, last 100, 120 years, the pace at which the change is happening is increasing. So right from, we talked about the example of cars and horse chariots. From those times, if we look, the pace at which the changes are happening has increased. And here we are talking about a change which is happening and is being adopted in a matter of weeks and months, not years or decades. So definite, and the pace of adoption and distribution is phenomenal. And at the same time, we humans are known to adopt and change with the times. So it has to be seen. It has to be seen how the current bunch of people adopt, especially if we talk about certain areas like content generation. So for instance, if we talk about a simple design studio. So earlier, if you want to get something done from a design studio, the design head will come, he will have multiple sessions with you for your brief. He'll say that, okay, George, I'll come back to you after, say, a couple of weeks or 3 weeks. He'll come back to you after with 2 or 3 options. You will choose, you will give another brief. And so that iteration itself is a quarter before you are able to finalize on something on which the production level stuff starts happening. So that those 3 quarters are now squeezed within 3 days. And the design studio, where there is a team for a client, where there is a team of 4 or 5 visualizers, copywriters, and all those stuff, they are all gone. So this is the new way of working. So it has to be yet to be seen how we humans react to it. And there are multiple such examples.
So Sunil, I was reading somewhere, just to add few points, somebody was saying professions will be lost, jobs might not be lost.
Yeah.
Some professions might disappear,
Yes.
like that's what comes across. And another interesting example, I think I was reading in some book as well, that it's not that doctors will become irrelevant. A doctor, it will enable a doctor to, maybe the AI technology, not just talking generative AI here, but AI will enable a doctor to see more patients compared to what he was able to see earlier.
Absolutely.
Okay. And which is fairly useful for countries like India, where doctor ratios are pretty bad, right? 80-90%. I think some of us come from rural backgrounds and we know how bad the situation is, right? I'm sure, Vijay, you would have seen that. I think you come from a very small town yourself, right?
Yeah. No, I think that is true. I think the professions will go, change. But the jobs, there will be, a lot of jobs. And look, in last whatever 50 years or even 100 years, the amount, how many hours we used to work has come down. I really hope all of us, put this technology to use so we can get to, 30-hour work weeks instead of, 60-hour work weeks that we are having. Like people wrote books even before this whole Gen AI about, why there should be 10-hour work week or 4-hour work week kind of a thing. Maybe this is a technology, which will, help us, accelerate that. The thing is, as I said, in a short run, we always overestimate. In a long run, we underestimate. And, I think we always have seen disruptive technologies like this. Think about the generation that grew up with bicycles to cars and the generation that has seen cars to, aeroplanes, right? It's like a 10x to 100x improvement in productivity and everything. Now, but we always adopted, that's a beautiful thing about being a human is, we cooperate, we leverage, and we adopt, and then we misuse, right?
That's an interesting cycle. So let me move on to another topic, and let me start with you, George. I think all of us in the panel probably will have a different mother tongue, So India, I think one of the greatest things about India is our diversity, right? And linguistic diversity is, amazing. So right now, whenever we talk of LLM and generative AI, all of us are talking English. And India is a country with so many languages, and I don't have the latest numbers, which is the largest spoken and which is second, third, whatever, doesn't matter, right? With 1.4 billion, I think there's market for almost every language, right? So George, just wanted to get your thoughts on how generative AI will likely to evolve in Indian languages and what might be the impact of some of those things.
Absolutely. I would look at it just the similar way as what used to do earlier. All computers, everything was in English, right? Then you started internationalization and you started getting everything. And that's when the adoption skyrocketed, right? And that's exactly what will happen here also. If you can get the prompts done in mother tongue, anybody can use it, right? That's where the adoptions, the hockey stick comes into picture, where you can just accelerate the number of people using it, right? It could just very simply be like just saying, hey, Google, tell me something. The people now do that. If you could do similar kinds of stuff, saying that, hey, Mr. AI, tell me about this in my mother tongue, right? A lot of people will be able to utilize it in a much more wider fashion. But the thing is, I'm not sure how soon that's going to happen, because it's still in very infant stage, at this point. So getting it and getting there will probably take a little time, not as much as it took currently, because of the fact that you could, of all the things, you could use generative AI itself to help develop the grammar, syntax, etc. for this part 2, right? And how it could identify what you're trying to say, the context in which you're saying it, and things like that, right? So my take is it will happen, and it should happen, because that's when the ability for everybody to participate in this revolution will be there.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, Sunil, you wanted to make some point on that.
Yeah, taking it up from what George said, definitely translation or transliteration of prompts is one thing. See, from a technical aspect, whether generative AI or the current flavor of AI is competent enough to do it, yes, it is competent enough to do it. But the very basic thing, if you look about from an Indian perspective, there are so many languages which are present. Within a language, there are so many dialects which are present. There is a saying, what we say, especially in UP, ki every 60 kilometers, the language, the dialect changes, and it does.
Pani और वानी दोनों change होता है, right?
Exactly, pani और वानी दोनों change हो जाते हैं. So from that perspective, if we look at it, these models, these things have to be trained on content. So that is something which will be a bigger challenge. It is slightly easier as of now as compared to what it was, say, 10 years back. But still a long way it has to go, and I feel a lot of things will be riding on the government initiatives. Because if the government of the day thinks that this particular piece of tech can be used by them to solve certain problems at large scale, then they will ensure that it reaches to the masses. And the moment they ensure it reaches to the masses, they will take care of this particular problem. And the tech itself is built in such a fashion that once the primary ingredients are done, it is like an Apple iPhone. If even if somebody, an elderly person, sees it for the first time, if he or she can just read what is written there, they will be able to operate. So that is one challenge, but how soon it can be done, I don't have a answer or a view on that, but I hope it will be done sooner.
By the way, I was recently just reading about a government initiative called Bhasha Dan. At least I saw the website. There's a website, Bhasha Dan. I have no idea how effective it is, how much data it has, but at least they seem to have some way in which you can contribute your language skills by tagging something and things like that. Yeah. So Vijay, what's your opinion? I guess you are quite fluent with Telugu as well as Kannada, right? So what's your input on how this language thing might work out?
Yeah, I think most of us in India, we know 3 to 4 languages, right? So
in South India, not in North India, actually.
Not in North.
Yeah, if you don't know at least 3, 4 languages, then you're not mostly Indians. But jokes apart, no, I think this is an opportunity for Indian founders. The way I basically see is just like, Viru created Daily Hunt and, Ankush created ShareChat, which is mostly vernacular, language driven content, right? One is like a text content, other is like a, entertaining content. I see like a lot more, opportunities for founders to create these things, not only in terms of content, even think in terms of banking, think in terms of, credit or like loans, or in terms of like distribution, in terms of even commerce, right? I think previously we could only do so much because, this, translation, transcription, transcribing was a very hard engineering problem. And a lot of these LLMs also emerged, trying to solve those use cases, right? Because the Google Translate was like probably one of the biggest reasons for them to think about, building on neural networks and, then getting to these large language models. I think there is an opportunity certainly for founders to go build companies, around, for Middle India or like for Bharat, as we, call. It's a hard problem. But look, we have also noticed that, look, our parents could never get to email, but all of them got on WhatsApp because the friction was so low. And now we know that, a lot of us, even like I'm just like around 40, even I'm not on TikTok, right? I'm not on this like, snapshot kind of, none of us are there, right? But like, my niece and my nephews, I see them like just hooked into this whole thing. And maybe that is the thing for us, as a opportunity, even for us to probably get into some of this super visual rich content and, use it and leverage it, because we feel, too alienated, just like our parents felt, alienated to internet. Maybe it helps even some of us. And there is certainly an opportunity to do both commerce, content, and, a lot of different use cases, from an India context. While a lot of these Valley companies are building for certain languages, like English or, maybe, Chinese and, a few other things. I think there is a huge opportunity to, tune, fine tune and train for local dialect and flavor.
By the way, Vijay, just one small piece of advice. Once kids become teenagers, maybe George can identify with that. You have no option but come on all these platforms, right? Our daughters and sons will not pick up our calls unless you, right, George, you relate to that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the other day, I was looking at what my son was doing, and he was on Discord. And I was like, oh, okay, that's your new place where you guys hang out. And I said, okay, let me also log in and see. I created an account, looked at it, but it is not something that I could relate to. I can relate to WhatsApp, I can relate to Facebook, I can relate to a lot of other things. I told him, yeah, you go ahead, do the stuff. I probably not my cup of tea.
By the way, there's one more interesting aspect which I learned from some entrepreneurs is that there is a good part of India which doesn't understand written language, right? So all of us who live in cities have probably done engineering or some technical education. We assume everybody can read and write in this country. But I think one of the interesting applications which I feel generative AI can enable a lot is, means combined with text-to-speech technology, is that it can make technology accessible to people who don't know how to read and write. And unfortunately, that's a large population of the country. I hope 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, maybe we'll have different numbers, but that's the reality of our country as of now. Okay, so let's move on to another topic. And I think, George, I'll again start with you because this is again back to infrastructure. Look, one thing which a lot of us have seen is that a lot of these technologies require large amount of investment, right? To train a LLM, I don't know what's the current number, but OpenAI would have spent probably billions of dollars and all that stuff, right? So, and some of us who are oldies in the domain will know that to set up a server room, we used to spend crazy amount of money once upon a time, right? But now a lot of these cloud providers have come who have converted your what is called as CapEx to OpEx, right? Your capital expenditure to your operating expenditure, right? So what do you see the role of a lot of these giants like Amazon, Microsoft, Azure, all these guys? How do you think they will sort of make generative AI more accessible to everybody?
Yeah, see, just as the cloud companies have got into, say, simple cloud computing. They started with that, right? Just computing. Then they went to storage. Then they went to networking. They went into databases. Now then in Kubernetes. So any of these technologies that come, most of these cloud companies, they tend to incorporate that as offerings, right? So just imagine that you had a Gen AI available in each of the cloud providers, giving you a service with an API, just like what OpenAPI gives, right? And it's priced at a pretty nominal amount as long as you're working within that environment. People will adopt that, right? So which is the reason, which would probably be the motor by which will ensure that most of these cloud providers will get into this and provide these services as services, right? Rather than just let users bring their own stuff. So, and that will be useful because for the simple reason that the more amount of people use generative AI, the more it learns, the more it's able to absorb, the more it's able to get things done correctly. But at the same time, that can also lead to biases, that can lead to other kinds of issues that we are seeing already that's happening. So there has to be a lot of guardrails that we have to put in place before it can be used by the general public in general, right? Or otherwise, some people might sit and do things like forcing it to go in a particular direction with a certain bias, and that can cause issues, right? So those are kind of things which you'll have to handle, but I'm sure most of the cloud companies will jump into this bandwagon and provide APIs, provide mechanisms by which people can use generative AI.
Sunil, your thoughts on how some of these cloud companies are likely to provide their solutions?
Yes, I mean, end of the day, for instance, if we talk about companies like AWS, GCP, Azure, all the public cloud companies, so essentially we are their customers as startups and digital natives and maybe enterprises who are moving on the cloud due to digital transformation journey. So essentially, in order to emphasize on the fact that they want to streamline their operations, they want to inculcate additional efficiency in the system, and they want to have that hook with the customer. It has already started. So for instance, if we talk about, say, a Microsoft Copilot, what they charge around $18-20 a month. If my developer fraternity is hooked on into, then I'm tied to them. So what George is saying, that they are exposing it and they are also exploring avenues and they are training their solution. Same thing goes with AWS. What they are doing it. This is typically the case with digital natives like us. If we talk about large enterprises who are not digital natives, then their customers are the CIOs and the CFOs of those companies, where they are in the process of streamlining their operations. The companies are in the process of streamlining their operations, and these big cloud providers, through their partners, they are in the process of building an ecosystem where, be it, I'll take a simple case, be it as easy as a analytics platform for an enterprise, or maybe a manufacturing company. So they are building those hooks through their partners and the combined or a shared offering, which these enterprises are jumping onto. So that is the way it is being inculcated into the system.
Cool. Vijay, your thoughts on it? Do you see Nutanix launching something in this space?
They have already launched, I mean, folks who don't know, I sold a company to Nutanix where I worked for like 4 years as a general manager. But they already launched GPT in a box, right? Because they provide, compute, and they provide a distributed file system, which is required, if you want to fine tune and run models and, run your apps from inference standpoint. I think for most people, I don't know in the audience, if most of you are like engineers or founders, there is no point you trying to basically build a model from ground up, right? For most use cases, when I say most use cases, 99% use cases don't need you to invent a model. Just like if you want to write a web app, we don't invent a browser. If you want to build a mobile app, we don't invent operating system, right? A mobile OS. So similarly, I don't expect us to, create LLMs. But the thing is, depending on whether your use case is B2C or B2B, in a B2C, most of the folks are using it to build personalized, experiences. In a B2B, we are mostly using it from a productivity, kind of a standpoint. Now, for personalization, of course, you need to fine tune, probably like, even trying with some of your data to get best of the breed results. It is better for you to go to Amazon, use Bedrock, or you go to Google, look at their Vertex, or you go to, Azure, look at their ML service, or, their hosted OpenAI. There are a bunch of other startups as well, which provide these things like, Cohere is there, and Anthropic is there, a whole bunch of them are there. In a B2B cases also, it makes sense for you to, leverage it, because it doesn't make sense for you to get into infrastructure operations of getting GPUs, then doing a clustering for it, and then on top of that, deploying and managing these models, upgrading these models, because these models are also like, evolving, right? From whatever version 3, 3.5, 4, it doesn't make sense for you to, get into that job. Your job is to focus on your customer use case, like your core offering, right? From that perspective, I think all these platform providers are already providing services, will continue to provide services. Some of them are hot, just like Google Vertex or Azure OpenAI, are like a lot more in the stream. Amazon has offerings, and everybody will launch their offerings. I think don't get lost in that noise. Use them to build for your use case, build for your product. The only thing you need to think about is how do I deal with compliance of, so in B2C cases, your end user might not ask for compliance. In B2B cases, your end customer will ask for compliance. So you have to think about, right? Should I train models with my customer data? Does my customer allow for it, right? And two is, what happens if a customer cancels my software that he's using and he says, okay, delete my data, is it possible for me to go do it? In that case, how do I handle? I think, spending time on those aspects would be more useful than worrying about, the fundamental infrastructure level kind of things, because these are the problems solved for scale and speed.
So Vijay, my next question and the last question is, I'll start with you because you are like Saurabh Ganguly was known for his timing on the offside, right? So I think you have the same type of timing in the entrepreneurship world. So let me ask you, give our audience some ideas on what type of, how can they use generative AI, some startups they can build, some products they can build.
So, okay, I think it's a luck. It's not like, I'm very smart or anything. It's a pure luck, always. So typically even with SaaS, right, over the last couple of years in a B2B context, I'm not an expert in B2C, maybe other folks can add. At least in a B2B context, we have seen that this horizontal, SaaS, is not seeing that much traction. But if you build a vertical SaaS, people were able to go build bigger companies, right? So I'll give you an example. Instead of building a CRM that looks like a Salesforce, you build a CRM for saloons, build a CRM for doctors, build a CRM for lawyers, build a CRM for insurance brokers or whatever, provide end-to-end workflows for them, right? So that way you can go sell, build a defensibility, etc. I think those things don't change with AI, even in a SaaS world, right? That kind of, so the one line I generally say is, the tighter the context, the wiser the model is, right? So instead of thinking a broad context for a broad use case, if you think, okay, look, I want to build insurance claim processing, software, I will use AI, and I will rewire the workflow for that, right? Or you basically say, look, I want to, build a faster procurement, software, where I will apply AI, which will do faster vendor onboarding, vendor validation, it will check for fraud, it will check whether they're billing as per the contract or not. Today, that those things have to be verified by human. I think there is like a lot of opportunities. Don't go too broad, especially if you're a first-time founder. That's my first advice. Even if you're a second, third-time founder, horizontal opportunities are much harder for you to get insertion in your potential customer. Starting with a verticalized software, I think specialized software with AI, I think there's a huge opportunity, right? Take any workflow, traditional workflow, just look at one part of that workflow and see how I can solve from top to bottom, right? I gave like, okay, claims processing, maybe for an insurance segment. Okay, procurement, maybe, from even e-commerce, even for a technology companies, right? Or manufacturing companies who do like a lot of this procurement, right? And so pick those workflows, go build software. There is a big opportunity. Don't build yet another generic software, because already there is, for every use case, generic use case, there are 10 apps or 100 apps or 1,000 apps. It's very hard for you to go to market and sell and make money. And don't get excited about, too much excited or get lost in, again, technology. See, technology, our end customers don't care today what database I use, what app server do I use, what API engine I use, right? Similarly, they don't care, what LLM you are using, what you are doing, right? All they care about is, are you able to solve my problem, right? And solve that really well, solve that cost effectively, and solve that for my scale and my needs. One question a lot of people ask is, how do I build moat? Because anybody can do this. The way you build moat is, you pick one specialized segment, solve the complex end-to-end workflow, do integrations that are required for that segment, do permissioning, right? For what it means to an insurance agent, claim processor, broker, the distributor network, the end customer. If you tune for that, I think you will go build a great company.
Cool. So yeah, recently I was talking to an entrepreneur and she was saying, be in a small room and get yourself heard instead of being in a large room and never get heard by anybody. So we are almost running out of time, but would like to get quick inputs from you on the same topic. George, if you can just give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I would concur with what Vijay was saying. Basically, the thing that you want to be trying to solve is a pain point, not a nice to have, right? Try and always solve for a pain point that a customer has. Understand the pain point and go for that. A simple example, right? Okay, there are these, every company uses 10 or tens of hundreds of open source software, right? If you could just build using generative AI or any, just simple tutorials for how to use this based on specific need of the customer, right? Because typically open source software is built to be used by many people in many different ways, right? But if you can understand, okay, this customer is going to do it, they need it for X, Y, Z purposes, come up with a way to generate a tutorial or a course that will help them get to their needs as quickly as possible, right? It's a simple, if you look at it, it's not when you think about it, it's not a big deal. But at the same time, when somebody gets down to the brass tacks to do it, it is actually a big deal, because the number of knobs that you have in any open source software are huge. And typically people get lost in all the different complexity, how to get it installed and run in the way they want it. So if there is some way to help people do that, that is a big win.
Got you, George.
It's a pain point for a lot of people.
I'm almost feeling like that we should field all the Unix man pages to a LLM and see what comes out of it.
Great idea. Sell it for $5 a month.
Yeah. Sunil, you have your thoughts on this, and then we'll close and get to questions by the audience.
Yeah, so I mean, Vijay correctly articulated the basics of building a business. So essentially, just adding to it, you need to identify a problem and reduce friction in the life of your customer. So reducing friction is very, very important. In terms of examples, I mean, the immediate couple of use cases which come into mind is in the field of content generation. It can be in all forms, be it written, be it audio, be it video, be it design or any other stuff. In terms of if we specifically talk about B2B SaaS, so a lot of evolution has happened. One thing which comes into my mind is a lot of evolution has happened in, say, QA automation field. A lot of stuff has been done. Why can't we have companies who build solutions or products around generative AI using QA automation? So today I need people who know Selenium, who know coding, who know everything. If it is based on generative AI, I know there is an endpoint, there is a form, and there are validation rules. Why it can't be done? So if it is done to perfection, it will reduce a lot of even the product managers or even the end customers. I mean, anybody can just take care of the quality.
Yeah.
Things like those.
Better CI/CD pipelines, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think all of us would love to see that. So I think on that note, I would just like to go through the questions. I can see a lot of questions and I'll just read the question and try to direct to one of you. So the first question from an anonymous attendee is, how does the scalability of generative AI affect SaaS deployment and management? Vijay, I think, would you like to answer that? How does the scalability of generative AI affect SaaS deployment?
Yeah. So typically, I think when we integrated this Gen AI models, what we basically realized was there are two aspects which will affect your user experience and also your workflow. One is what's the latency for it to do the inference, and two is what's the cost of that inference, right? I think these two things actually affect. The way we basically thought was, user will type some question, you send it to a model, the response has to come back. Now, there is a latency, right? It's not going to happen in a fraction of milliseconds, unfortunately, because these are like fairly, sophisticated models. So you basically change some UX patterns, and you also basically, calculate both in terms of how you are going to price your product, in terms of saying what is going to cost for me to do these inferences. I think these are the things that are worth understanding both from deployment perspective and management perspective. The second thing is you should worry about your customer data, segmenting that customer data, and masking any sensitive data before you send it, from a deployment perspective. You need new tools in terms of monitoring and tracing your prompts entire life cycle. If you are building with any open source models or even OpenAI, tools like LangChain, Llama Index help. Even in LangChain, if you want to use Langsmith kind of a thing for tracing and monitoring, if you want to use any SaaS tool like Prompt Monitor, there are like a bunch of those tools, those things needs to be included in your DevOps workflows. The second thing is you need evaluation to be done because these models keep getting upgraded. So whatever prompt engineering you have done for version 1, if the model goes from M1 to M2, it might not give the desired output. There is quite a few of it, but broadly, these are the things I would say you should be considering or at least be aware of.
Okay, next question is again from an anonymous attendee. I think we have already, Vijay, you already answered it in a word of
yes, we answered that part. Yes.
How we can ensure ethics and compliance in SaaS. So I'll mark that as done. Next question I'm throwing you at Sunil. I'm guessing that you would have studied under Maninder Agrawal and all other professors in IIT Kanpur. So will AI be able to solve P versus NP problem?
See, essentially, this is something which has been there for quite some time since we started studying, and whether or not it will be solved, it's really tough to say. It's really tough to say, because end of the day, how these models function, all of us know they do work and train themselves depending on the information what is being fed to them. Right. So you never know that it may happen that there is a pieces of information occurring existing in say n different silos which are together needed to solve that. Okay. Which the people who are operating in those silos do not have access to, but somehow this particular piece of tech has. So that is one thing which can be done, but nothing is for sure. But the way that information schema itself is condensing, so like a black hole, so it can happen.
Okay, makes sense. So next one I'll answer myself. Can Gen AI read government policy documents and generate solutions for problems that would take a lot of brain power while keeping human ethical standards in place? So if you hadn't added the last part, while keeping human ethical standards in place, I would have said yes. But human ethical standards are itself debatable at this point. So I would say let's not expect the generative AI to solve that. But yeah, human ethical standards is a very, very, something which is ethical in one country, one society, might be very unethical in, like in India, touching feet is a very common thing, right? All of us would have done in our families, but in some other society, touching feet is not considered as very appropriate, right? So otherwise, I think generative AI can solve the other problems, certainly. We have seen feeding large amount of documents and trying to answer questions based on that. Those kind of use cases work pretty well with generative AI. Okay, next one is by Neha what skill and expertise should SaaS teams develop to work effectively with generative AI technologies? I guess Vijay has covered a lot of it, right? Vijay, you have talked about enough things which people have to, right? So I'll just mark this.
We have covered. I think then there is a next question also. Probably these two things could be covered.
Yeah, go ahead, Vijay.
Yeah, I think the first thing is, the good thing is AI before Gen AI required a complex skills, understanding, specialized talent. The good news with Gen AI is it converted AI into API. So it's no different from your SaaS, like your software engineering. So the bar has reduced or commoditized, which is good. So you don't need to learn a lot, but I think there are a few new things you need to learn. How to do prompt engineering is one thing you need to learn. How do I deal with validation of output for a factfulness check and formatting and biases. I think there are like few nuances to be learned. There are really good courses in deeplearning.ai, how to build apps using Gen AI, how to tune models, how do you productionize LLM based apps. These three courses I would highly encourage Neha, or I forgot the name, sorry, encourage you folks to look at. In terms of data security, privacy concerns, look, this is an evolving field. There is no, just like we figured out privacy with mobile, increasing technology, security with, all the, tech that we invented. I think there are things evolving, but at least based on your use case, I think you need to consider a few aspects. It's never a good idea to send all your customer data to any models, number one. Two is the good news is there are already frameworks like Microsoft Presidio, etc., which allow you to do effective PII or sensitive information masking and stuff. Whatever data, again, you apply whatever traditional security things that we would have applied in terms of encryption, masking, tracking who is accessing this data, etc. In terms of audit trails, would be useful. Those things don't change with the Gen AI. It's just that there is an angle of how do you detect bias. These are like new things. I would highly again encourage, there are courses in deeplearning.ai is becoming like a central place to understand software aspects and also understand tooling aspects of implementation.
George, you would like to add anything to this question? How does generative AI impact data security and privacy concerns?
Yeah, so it's actually a very important aspect because generative AI can be used to understand what is PII, right? A lot of times PII is not very easily recognizable, given because it depends on the context. Some date appearing somewhere doesn't mean that it is an important date, right? But if you can understand the context in which the date is appearing or the number is appearing, you can basically interpret whether it's PII or not, right? So those are the kinds of things that you want to use generative AI to be able to figure out. Hey, this is PII. Let's get it masked. This cannot go out of this area because of GDPR or any of those kinds of things, right? So it will definitely be a tremendous help for enterprises to figure this out.
Okay, so Shruti, just wanted to check on time with you. We have a few more questions left. Do you want us to cover all of them, or there are 3-4 more questions which are left right now?
Hi, Birla. Yeah, if you would like to cover, then everyone is already enjoying the session so far. So
I perfectly hope none of the speakers have a hard timing. So we'll just finish all the questions. Some of them are very interesting. Atia, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct. Namaste. How is generative AI adapted to international relations, especially in specific context? I have no idea of this actually. Anybody wants to take this? Otherwise, I'm guessing that we might not be the right guys to talk about it. Means whatever we'll say probably will not be correct. I think most of us are taking.
It's not clear international relations in what context, and maybe so.
Yeah, so I think I'm guessing.
Probably we should skip this.
Yeah, we might not be right guys to answer this, so I'll just mark this as done. Are there ethical concerns related to using generative AI? And I think we have talked about this. So this one I'll mark is done. Sharat Singh. Hope you are not Sharat Singh from IIT Kanpur. But seeing your question looks like that you are. My question is to George. Thank you for making clear. Less job for me, right? To figure out who to. Do you think that popularity of Gen AI will make the marriage of vector databases with traditional OLAP engines like Yugabyte, ClickHouse Data, Fusion Spark, I know, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be it's very important, right? Because you have all these embeddings that people keep getting. They need a database to put it in form of vectors, and then be able to search them and get an appropriate result. Definitely, this is 100%. I have no doubt in my mind that this will happen.
Yeah, by the way, Sharad, recently I saw Elastic launching Elastic we have always viewed as to help us doing search and TF, IDF, all that stuff. But I saw a launch by Elastic in vector databases recently. So then Sana has a question. Are there any risk concerns associated with the growing reliance of generative AI in SaaS? Vijay, you would like to answer that?
I was just answering a bunch of them as a typed questions as well. Are there any risks of being reliance on generative AI? Yeah, I think obviously there is, I think we can't rely on it overly, because we know that for a fact, getting it to only spit out facts is not possible today as we know it. So fact verification is super important. And, I think it is still going to be assisting humans as a co-pilot assistant or as a, automated intern, versus, doing the full job. This is the same reason why in the flights we have, autopilot, but we still have pilots. I think similarly, I don't expect this to change with any autonomous technology, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to give one example.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to give an example. Recently I was reading, there was a couple of lawyers in the US who submitted a brief to a court based on the response from ChatGPT with a lot of references to a lot of cases and all that stuff. Where the judge read it and he figured out that most of those cases that we're referring to are bogus and never existed. So it's actually a big risk to directly, in today's environment, to be able to directly rely on what ChatGPT or any of the generative AI gives you. You have to be able to take it, understand what it is, grok it properly, and then use judiciously. Recently I tried generating some code using just ChatGPT, right? I just typed in some command and the code that it came out would not even compile. And some of these error checks that were being done was completely redundant, was bogus. So you can't just take things from it directly and utilize it at that point. You have to take it, analyze it, fine tune it. You can even use generative AI itself, ChatGPT itself, to fine tune it and come up with the correct result. But you have to take the effort to do that, which is why it is very important that you don't just blindly use what it is. There's a lot of risk associated with it. You should be able to do it in a very judicious manner.
Praveen Kumar, your next question, good resources. I think Vijay has already answered this. Deeplearning.ai has multiple courses. So I think that is already answered. Now I have a question by Siddha Jain. What challenges do SaaS providers face in adopting generative AI? I think we have talked a little bit about it. So I'll mark this as done. Surya Jain, will AI be NP versus? I think we have done that. How do we ethically gain information? Okay, this is interesting. I think, how do we ethically gain the information needed to train AI for specific client needs? I think, Vijay, you were talking a little bit about this, right?
Yeah. So I think, so one thing is, obviously you can't use any restrictive data sets for training. A lot of times, because most of these models are trained on open web crawl. In your case, if you want, specific training, either you basically hire people or work with vendors to create this, data. And if there are any ethical dilemmas, don't use synthetic training, right? Because a lot of us are also using models to train the training models to generate the training data itself, right, for a specific domain. So that's one thing that probably I would avoid. If there are ethical things, humans have to do those things and have to be reviewed. There are like bunch of companies who do this, like Super Annotate, and a whole bunch of them are there, who provide data verification of the data, labeling of it.
Okay, so I guess we are done with question. I see 3 questions, but I guess those are better taken one-on-one. One is about ONDC, which I think will be slightly out of scope here. And I think the last one for manufacturing company, I think it will be the last question which we have. It will be good for somebody to understand the overall context of it instead of giving very generic answer, which will not help you, whoever has put that question. So I guess I'll hand it over to Shruti. Shruti, if you can take over from here. And
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bridla. Thank you for skillfully guiding us through this thought-provoking discussion and most importantly, keeping the energy alive. Our speakers' insights, experience, and wisdom have truly enriched our understanding and most definitely inspired us as well. And lastly, to our attentive audience, I am actually truly overwhelmed by the amount of responses that we have received on Zoom and LinkedIn Live. To our audience, your engagement and curiosity have been the driving force behind the success of this event. So thank you so much for being the part of this journey. Now, as we wrap up, remember that the quest for knowledge never ends. We'll be back with another episode of Zest Talks, ready to explore new horizons of idea and insights. Remember to seize this opportunity to share your thoughts and experience through our distinctive feedback form, which is pinned in the Q&A box. Until then, stay curious and keep the zest for learning alive. See you in the next episode. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.